Hi, everyone. So nice to see all your faces since we missed some of you during the presentations. But thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. And I think you guys have done a great job of showcasing really the range of stuff that telecoms operators are doing, commitment to try and really drive some real change in the industry. So I'm going to ask a few questions and then we'll open up to the audience because I'm sure you guys have some too. So I'm going to dial all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. Let's hear from Christopher and Jürgen again. So I'm curious to know, obviously, what you guys developed around COVID-19 and predicting patients is really interesting. And I have two questions around that. So the first one is, where does this go next? What else can you do with telecom data that will be relevant for the healthcare industry? And how transposable is this into other markets? Can you speak to Sultan and help him do this? How long will that take to transfer over to the UK? So maybe question one first for you, Christopher.
All right, thank you. A very good question. I'm new to the healthcare space, so it's been especially rewarding to learn how we could be useful also here. I do think we've scratched the surface, and I think there will be a lot more applications, certainly. Human mobility is about who we are. It's about how we interact in the physical world, but it's also how diseases spread, and hospitals are for physical beings. So I think mobility should be used and can be used a lot more for various types of use cases. And for this particular case with what's the next step? And we would love to see this, of course, being used by many, many more. So the way we help with that at Telia is to take and productify things and make it available on the shelf. I think we're not fully there yet with this solution, but that's also how you would make this actually transportable to other markets as well. But it was really the Ericsson team where, our data is in our footprint. Colleagues like KPN, BT have that data for other markets, but it's really, I think, the brainpower in Jürgen's team that actually transformed this into real insight. So handing over to you, Jürgen, to elaborate on that.
Sure, thanks, Christopher. Yeah, so the technology could definitely be reused. Of course, some kind of adaptation would be needed because it was, when it comes down to detail, it's a certain sort of parameters and properties of a data set. But I'm absolutely sure that something similar could be done in UK or in other parts of the world. So yes, absolutely. Even though it's the same for us, it's not something we can take off the shelf and just sell or share, but it would be possible, yes.
I mean, just to probe you a little bit more on that, what kind of technology readiness does an operator have to have in order to implement this? And what's your time frame? Okay, you have an algorithm that you've developed in Sweden. How does it take 1 week, 4 weeks, 6 months to tailor that to a new market? I know I'm pressing you, but just a little bit.
Yeah, you're welcome to do that. I would say it would take something from, depending on the setup. If it would be identical to what we have run in Sweden, I would say that it will take a couple of weeks, something to do sort of a trial in the same sort of semi-manual way when we use data scientists. If we want to fully automate and get this into production, I would say we're talking about months, something like that.
Okay, great. There you go,
and that
guys.
assumes, of course, already that the data exists from the telco. For us, Absolutely. It has been a big investment and effort to actually produce this underlying privacy, secured official statistic type of data that underpins you can't do any AI if you don't have the data. So that takes more than a few weeks or even a few months. That's actually a big endeavor for a telco to actually make this available in a productized fashion.
Yeah, of course. I think
Absolutely.
that there's a telco
Fully
readiness
agree.
First. So Simon, obviously with the data exchange that you were sharing with us in the Netherlands, you're sort of playing a layer below this application where you're sort of the aim is to aggregate the data and make it available for these types of applications. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
And are you enabling
And,
anything like this yet? Sort of how far along are you in this journey of getting a functional up and running data exchange that could enable something advanced?
There are different roads towards this dream. Of course, we all want to use artificial intelligence more and more in the current processes. What we started a couple of years ago is a data services hub, which is actually running on real-time data and create with AI partners new insights. That's one road. But what is complexity in the healthcare sector is, at least in the Netherlands, is that all this crucial data that you want to use for AI is enclosed in different silos. And the first step is to open up these silos and open up the data in these applications in a common language. And as soon as we have laid down this basic infrastructure, this basis data exchange, then we can start using all the different tools to get new insights and new information out of that. So it takes, I think, 1 or 2 years to get this fundament fully operational for the Netherlands. And in the meantime, we're already working with research institutions to create the first steps and first insights. So it's a parallel transition.
So Sultan, what's your feeling in terms of the comparison between your European peers and what's happening in the UK in terms of getting this data available and developing the kinds of solutions that Telia is bringing to market? I think it'll go on automatically. Can we have Sultan's mic on, please? I think they do.
It's on?
There you go.
Okay, I think there's probably 2 or 3 sides to this kind of particular problem. So I think my colleagues are absolutely right. So the data availability is there with the telco. So we could kind of capture that data through our networks, okay? The issue we've got in England particularly, as you know, the kind of data strategy is kind of being looked at. Last week, we've had the upheaval of NHSD and X, kind of our regulatory bodies coming together. Then there's the Information Commissioner's Office, and there's a whole lot of, if you like, information governance required to kind of do this. But in terms of the principles, they absolutely apply. So this is about making kind of clinical intervention or a system intervention to prevent something or kind of to improve something. We've had it before. So within the hospital space, for example, RFID technology, certainly in America, is used to kind of monitor assets, patients, etc. So there's no difference in principle in terms of using mobile technology, combining it with kind of in-house RFID technology, synthesizing the two, developing your algorithms. I think telco can, we have a lot to learn from each other clearly. We could probably do that quite quickly, The issue you've got is kind of where does the data sit, the ownership control, etc. of the data, and the permissions reliable, primary usage, secondary usage, anonymization, pseudonymization. We have colleagues from kind of data companies there. Sensine Health are here, right? We've talked about this for years. So the principles are sound and the applications are really real. So I'll give you one. So we had similar technology. This is during my NHS days. And because we can track movement of people and assets through our kind of a hospital estate, we could actually map back to a serious untoward events and work out the, if you like, the precedent events that led to that. So there is kind of systemic learning and a kind of safety benefit as well. So I think the telcos are ready. The other side also needs to get ready, and we need to kind of work together. But I think there's a co-creation piece here. I think to differing degrees, and I can't reveal any more because of practical reasons, we're into all of these 3 areas quite actively.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I was going to press you more, but you've already anticipated my question. So I want to, get from all of you guys a sense of, what do you think has been your biggest challenge of trying to bring digital solutions into the healthcare space? What has been the biggest challenge you've faced, and what did you do to overcome it? So I know, Christopher, you're new, so maybe you're coming at this with a fresh pair of eyes.
Well, I think it's quite similar to what we see in bringing this type of data and insights into other industries. It is the maturity of digitalization. It's hard to be data-driven or accept the data-driven approach, or someone comes with a product or an insight if you're not working like that, if you're not willing to change your way of working. and change your processes around that. And for me, coming in with fresh eyes or tired eyes from the other industries, then I see it's quite similar. Data exists in silos. Digitalization is a key enabler, and we as telcos can actually provide a data set that we have curated, that we're ready to provide. That can be a way to unlock and not wait for unlocking your own silos. But it does require that you are ready to do that digitalization journey and be ready to be data driven.
Jorgen, anything to add from your experience?
No, I would say sort of experience from our COVID-19 project is that the collaboration is really key. So that's the way of overcome challenges, that we need to work together. This project we run, it wouldn't have been possible without being the three parties. We wouldn't been able to do that, Ericsson and Telia together. Well, we could have guessed doing something, but then we wouldn't know if it would have been really useful for the healthcare. But now, since it was a three-party collaboration, it actually worked out very well. So I think that's an important aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this all yesterday and today. All of this co-creation is really sort of the key, and making sure that you're starting with the same idea on, you understand that you're working towards a collective goal. Simon, from your experience, sort of what's been the toughest challenge in developing the data exchange so far?
Well, I recognize the same things as mentioned. So it's collaboration. It's also about being mature in your digitalization, because that will create data instead of that. As soon as it's there and we are able to use it, then we can learn from it and adopt. But maybe to add to the first 2 points is that what we also see is that we come from a world where telcos created, and we did it ourselves, a kind of a POC paradise, a proof of concept paradise. We bring the technology and experiment with it, and that's useful to learn. But now we're in times that we don't have time to facilitate and to wait for all the results. So we have to build on each other's shoulder and then move on. And I think that has to do with culture, with mindset, with willingness to work together. And I think momentum for that is right there. So if I talk with the healthcare sector and the professionals, we are really waiting for the telco to tell them what's possible and advise them how, and let them fill in how the processes can be digitized and where to start, and then move together, build on each other initiatives instead of doing it all by ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's really good, that proof of concept paradise. I'm going to remember that one. Sultan, what's your perspective from being on both sides of the fence?
The perspective is very similar to my colleagues. I think the first thing to say is context. So we are kind of on the back end of a pandemic and something else is coming on. And it's been 24 months where my NHS colleagues are running on fumes. And I think that's probably the same for all the other health systems, kind of certainly in kind of the developed world. So the bandwidth that doctors and nurses has is limited. The organizations are firefighting, and it's kind of tried to make it to Friday. Yeah. So that's the context. But in that is opportunity, because some of the processes that we have within the NHS and in other systems, they really require looking at. And I think just to my last colleague's statement around, I think, we need to develop infrastructure. Absolutely. We need to kind of seize the opportunity of COVID. But the storytelling around what is in the art of the possible is really important. So we kind of overlay AI data over a kind of suite of data points. What is the impact going to be on outcomes? If we can make that link very clearly and kind of show some evidence, then there is a real level of buy-in. And if we pick the right organization, so the culture and leadership is really important. So the NHS is kind of not one organization, it's a constellation, right? And there is a normal distribution. And it's not always the most obvious places where you'll get the most benefit for your investment and partnership buck. So thinking about who your partner is, what the culture is. I'll tell you a good indicator though. The NHS does a staff survey every year. And the organizations in the top right-hand quadrant tend to be the most innovative, safe, effective, caring, well-led and responsive. So if you pick where the kind of, if you like, the the base metal is there to kind of work on, you won't be too far wrong. I think as telcos, my real sense is telcos have a real willingness, certainly in the UK and what I can see in Europe, to do this. And it requires a level of collaboration, but we've got to try, perhaps fail fast, iterate, and keep going. That's my two penneth.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for a question from the audience. Does anyone want to put anything to the panelists? Don't all raise your hands at once. Yeah, please go ahead. Mike is coming.
Julian Bradwell from Sensign Health. We've talked a lot about collaboration and co-creation, but we've got 4 global powerhouses on the stage. I just wondered where small, medium enterprises fit into that space, or does it just stick with you and the healthcare systems? Bit of a loaded question.
Does anyone want to take that?
I can start. I think small, medium enterprises, startups, scale-ups play a hugely important role going forward. I think we see this, at least in other industries, where these smaller, medium enterprises are fast, especially in the world of AI, coming up, solving very narrow use cases very well. But they don't have always the ability to scale that quickly into the industries and get quick customer uptake. We as bigger players typically have a large customer base already. We can do a lot more to enable that. And that is something we in Digitalisation X are working heavily on, is actually leveraging that and not do everything ourselves, but use that innovation, that speed that's coming from these small, medium enterprises, and do what we can to scale that into our footprint.
Any more to add?
Yeah, I'd just to back up what my colleague says. So this is Julian around complementarity. So your suite of products, your very, very clever AI suite, there is absolute read across into kind of the health service. But as we've said, what we can do in terms of telco, we can lay the infrastructure for you, but also support you in kind of scaling up. So I think if the way health services are going across the planet, and if digitalization is going to be the big thing, which it is, it's about digital deep data ecosystems. Yeah, and ecosystems by their very nature require complementarity in its full sense, and a multiplicity of providers. Some of the biggest innovations we've seen in the UK health market have come from SMEs. So I think they are vitally important, because the agility, but also the way to solve problems is by kind of moving very quickly, and you have that, I think, ahead of us. So let's work together.
Great. Well, I'm aware that we've got another session coming up. So I would like to thank our panelists all very much. Thank you so much for sharing with us what you've been doing in healthcare. It's been really enlightening to hear what you're doing, and looking forward to seeing how it evolves next year. Thank you very much. Round of applause for our panelists.
So much.